Uh, but under current law, to be able to put this splint on somebody, you need to be a licensed EMS provider. And many of my members are not licensed EMS providers. Some are, but many are not. And this law will make it legal for them to put this on. They are all, anybody that would would do that would be trained. Majority of we do about 30 missions a year. We can be 3, 4, 5 miles away from the road, and it takes about 20 people to carry somebody out that distance. So the sooner we can get that on, the better. Fish and Game Conservation Officers are exempt from this, the license requirement. And this, many times, we are first on the scene. Typically, at least 75, 80% of the rescuers are volunteers from a search and rescue team. And this will just correct, I think, maybe an oversight that will allow search and rescue members, when working on a mission activated by Fish and Game, to provide minimal first aid, non-invasive, uh, but would allow us to do that without being in conflict with the EMS law. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief? Seeing none, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up is Colonel Jordan, Chief Enforcement Officer for Fish and Game.
Good to see you all. I'm Kevin Jordan, the current Chief of Law Enforcement over at Fish and Game. The commission, Fish and Game.
That would be better. Should I start over? I apologize for that. So this has been an issue in the past for us. So this law would just clean that up, and it would make it much easier for them to do their job. I will tell you, without the help of these volunteer groups, I think I've said this many times here, we wouldn't be doing search and rescue. And the PEMI team is one of our #1 teams that helps us. So those carryouts would require every officer I have in the state on duty to cover. So they would be nobody available to do anything else. So I want to, any chance we get to help these volunteer groups, it's in our best interest, the state's best interest to do that. That's all I have.
Thanks, Chief. Questions for the Chief? Representative Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question.
Sure.
Is there a limit to what medical service they can provide?
There is. I think the law states now, the current law starts talking about invasive medical procedures. So if you were conducting, most of our emergency services are that are done on a trail in wilderness are splinting, bandaging, those kinds of types of injuries, and you'd be okay to do that. If we were to start providing medical meds or doing any kind of invasive surgery type operations, you couldn't do that. And we wouldn't do that on a trail anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for the Colonel? Colonel, so we're talking about, for lack of, I'm not going to say non-certified, because in person might be certified in first aid or other provisions, but non-licensed people who would potentially providing first aid type of services, bandages, that kind of thing, splints
And some licensed. There would be some that are licensed to do that. But yes, that would be allowing, the law requires them to be licensed to do this in their townships. And it doesn't expand to when folks come down into Franconia if they don't have a license for that. So this would allow them to do that.
And does this, I'm sorry, follow up. So this would extend to just also non-fire department that you might have a relationship with that are search and rescue teams. So putting
Correct.
my hat on as the Civil Air Patrol Squadron Commander, right? So
Sure.
they have search and rescue teams that help for downed aircraft and other reasons that are also at the call of Fish and Game. So
Yes.
if they were to go out and help you in a search and they found the subject and they could apply basic first aid measures, right?
Yes.
And without worrying about liability.
Yeah, so just to clear up a little confusion, the chief wears many hats behind me here because he's a very dedicated public servant. But most of his PEMI team are not fire departments. They're a variety of people, a lot of medical people, some that are non-medical. So yes, that would be correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Harvey?
So, at times, do you use just members of the public to help in searches and so forth?
I do, but we limit that. I call I refer to these folks as my professional volunteers. That's really who I rely on. I would not ask, unless it was a dire emergency, I would not ask a common citizen to perform any kind of medical procedure.
So
I would
this-
want one of these folks on board.
So, follow up, please. So this would not include those just general members of the public that you have to use on a extremely.
I would say no.
Okay.
I would say that this would only apply to those search and rescue team members.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
right.
Any further questions? Seeing none?
Thank you, sir.
Is there anybody else who'd like to testify on Senate Bill 260? Seeing none? Quick straw poll, kind of getting a sense of where we want to go on the executive on this. Is there anybody, well, let me put it this way. Who would be in favor of ought to pass as written and presented right now? Is there anybody opposed? Okay. So I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 260, and I will open the executive session on Senate Bill 260, and I look to Representative Smith for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion, OTP, Senate Bill 260.
And seconded by Representative Harvey. Give me 1 second, because we don't have a clerk. I'm playing chairman, clerk, and clerk. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 260? Representative Close.
Just to make you aware, we've had this bill before us. I believe the colonel testified before in this bill, a bill like it. And the problem wasn't the committee. We passed it like 20, I believe it was 21 to nothing. But when it got to finance, that's where we got into trouble. And that's where it was shot down. So I just want to make you aware of that.
Well, the good news, this doesn't have an FN on the end of it, so I don't think it's going to finance. All right, are we ready for the vote? Great, give me 1 second, I'm gonna put this other hat on. Representative Khan,
Yes.
Representative Close. Representative Howard. Representative Craig. It's not here. Representative Love.
Yes.
Representative Wolf. Representative Kittredge.
Yes.
Representative Allard.
Yes.
Representative Smith.
Yes.
Representative Harvey.
Yes.
Representative Query.
Yes.
Representative Espinita. Well, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Massimilla. Representative Gallagher.
Yes.
Representative Kenny isn't here. Representative Horgan.
Yes.
Representative Shirtliff.
Yes.
Representative Ellis, Representative Oxel, and the chair votes yes. Is there anybody I missed? No. On a vote 15-0, the motion of ought to pass
Moved.
carries, and I put it on consent unless there's an objection. Seeing no objection, it'll be on consent. And just like that, we're done, ladies and gentlemen, until 10:30. And we'll be back at 10:30. We'll close the executive session. We'll be back at 10:30 where we'll take up the two bills that are under interim study and hopefully knock them out with as much efficiency. So thank you.
So for those of us who are we're substituting for the first hearing, do we need to be back for that, or is that a separate thing?
Talk to your minority leader, ranking member, and she'll give you where to go.
Okay.
And just like that, that one's done. Yeah, just do something real. If you don't do it, I'll do it. Don't worry about it. It's not that hard. Harvey, yep. Smith made the motion, seconded, motion about to pass. It was seconded by Harvey.
Mr. Chair, do you plan to vote on the bills from interim study as
Yes,
well
I
today?
want to get them all knocked out. So
Well, that's what I thought.
so we don't have to come back.
Come back. Okay.
I'll give you a heads up on what I'm thinking this is going to go is, I'm guessing the search warrant bill is going to not recommend. I think that's going to be, and then on the bear bill, we're also not going to recommend only because it's not enough data considering we just changed the law and they literally just put the rules in place last month.
Right.
And so not enough
And I would
time.
agree with both of those. The search and rescue, I just think we need more than just this afternoon to talk about. That's not search and rescue,
The search warrant?
yeah, the search warrant.
Yeah, I think we'll be done. I think Colonel Jordan's already agreed to work with anybody else in the future that might want to clean up the existing language, which doesn't actually have anything to do with the bill itself, just to do with that 207 language, 206 language, whatever it was. And so he's free to do that on his own. Any member's free to pick up the ball and go with him again, but as a committee, I think we'll recommend.
So I'll see if they want to stay, but it sounds like it's going to be pretty quick.
That's what I anticipate, just as efficient as we just were. I anticipate 15 minutes each bill and we're done. I think we've all heard the public testimony. We already recommend it.
Okay, nice.
Just so, Representative Smith, 15-0.
So Smith will do, it'll be,
Smith again, right?
yeah. Recommendation is, I'm sorry. So, no, this is. So we're going to call a work session of the Fish and Game Committee into order. We have two bills that we held over for interim study. One bill is House Bill 1091 relative to search warrants for individuals engaged in fish and game activities, and the second one was House Bill 1201 FN, which was relative to bear damage. I'm gonna we'll take up first House Bill 1091. And just to quick summarize, at least my version of the summary of what we talked about on this bill and what we heard in testimony was this was the difference between is it 207 or 206, Colonel Jordan? That was 206. The 206 conservation officer language and the full-blown police powers language. Under 207, fish and game officers can have a standard of reasonable suspicion in order to do certain searches. Whereas under the 594 language, it's full-blown police officer language, is its probable cause standard for searches. The testimony we heard was that there have been 3 cases brought to the Supreme Court, all of which have been found in favor of the reasonable suspicion standard at this point. That being said, Colonel Jordan did, I'll paraphrase what he said, if he can get his hands around the neck of the person who wrote the 206 statute, he'd be happy to throttle them. And so he's willing to work with any member that might want to go forward with language around that 207 to clean up that the 206 statute, to clean that up. But this bill wasn't it. Remember, we deal with what's actually the written words on the page and not the concepts of things. And so the written words on this page were not in such a way that we wanted to pass it. And I just, in respect to Colonel Jordan and that comment about working with somebody on the 206 language, I wanted the interim study, which I thought was the appropriate motion. So my inclination on this bill, again, because we deal with the words written on the page and not the concepts, is that this should not be recommended for future legislation. But I'll open it up for further discussion. And if anybody wants to ask Colonel Jordan questions or anybody wants to testify in the audience to why that might be a bad idea, I'm happy to listen to it. But is there any further comment from the committee on House Bill 1091 relative to search warrants? Representative Harvey.
I would be happy to take your recommendation because Colonel Jordan is really the expert, and although there may be problems, it does seem like it's a problem that if we tried very quickly in the next 15, 30 minutes to fix, we could come up with something that's worse. And I think his offer to work with somebody and come up with a better bill is a good offer. So I would be very much in favor of your recommendation of not.
So just to be clear, our only committee recommendations are either to recommend it for future legislation or not recommend it for future
Exactly.
legislation, not to redraft language or consider amendments or anything else. It's about the language that's in the bill and whether we think this bill should move forward for future legislation for someone else to take a look at it again. So I just want to be clear on that. We're not going to be drafting any
Right,
language. It's
exactly.
strictly whether or not the current bill is written, we recommend for future or not. So just to make sure we're clear on what the motions are.
Thank you.
Representative Horgan, go ahead.
I believe this might have been heard one of the days I was substituting, and I was struck by the fact that, the Second Amendment groups came out and forced to testify against it, but we didn't get any input against it from the actual sportsman community. So it wasn't anybody who was actually engaged in hunting or trapping or fishing that was opposed to it, which was sort of interesting. Which probably another sign in my mind that that it's best not to try to best to wait till next year to try to do anything with this idea. But
Great. Colonel Jordan, did you want to add anything? Did I summarize okay?
You did, sir. I think there's also
Thank you. Any further comments from committee members? Representative Close.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Being a police officer and making many arrests, I've got a lot of search warrants. I got 2 of the biggest ones ever the state ever had on probable cause. I think what we have here is some of the old type game ones that used to do certain things, going to Bob houses, and you hear all kinds of stories about this and that. And it's not that way today. Today, we have a CO that's well-educated. The COs are well-run. They have very good supervisors. I've seen a lot of them. I've dealt with a lot of them. I fish a lot. I hunt a lot. I'm everywhere over the state. And I've been checked more than probably 30, 40 times by COs. And everyone has been polite. Everyone has been courteous. I have a Bob House at Cattle Landing. They always knock on the door before they come in. I've never had a problem with a CO. They've asked to come in. And what you want to do is be careful, because a lot of the people said, especially as a police officer, I want to get into your trunk. I'll be real nice and polite to you. You know, would you let me look in there, you know? Then all of a sudden I find a pound of marijuana in there, then all things have changed. But when you go and start looking for search warrants, you're opening up a whole bucket of worms. If I have to get a search warrant, I'll guarantee you one thing, you're going to jail if I find something. I'm going to impound your car. I'm going to take your gun. I'm going to take your fishing rod. I'm going to take your boat. If I have to do all the typing and make out all the reports with a warrant, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give you your money's worth. A lot of times I stop here, you get a small bag of pot or something like that, we log it, give you a chewing, you're out, you're gone, or a summons, and you're gone. But if I have to dare the warrant, I'll tell you, you're going to jail, and I'm taking everything with you. So I think when we have something like this bill in front of us, we want to be very, very careful how we handle this, because we're opening a bucket of worms for the COs and for everybody else. And I just say, things have been going rather good at Fish and Game right now, and I don't think we should be upsetting the whole bandwagon over a couple stories about this one and that one and everything else. And I just think we've got to use a little common sense here and not get excited. Thank you very much, Chairman.
So is that saying you agree with the not recommended for future legislation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Further discussion among the committee? Again, I do think some of this comes down, I call it boogeyman legislation, right? We're afraid of something, we're not sure what we're afraid of, right? And that's kind of what this bill is that everyone has a story, but no one, when you get down to the basis, no one can find the facts of the story in the back end, so it's not really there. So I don't like boogeyman legislation, something we might be afraid of, but no one's ever seen it. And so that's why I'll support not recommended for future legislation. Seeing no other testimony, I recognize Representative Smith for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion on HB 1091 to not recommend for future legislation.
1 second, I'm going to give Representative Shirtliff a chance. Thank you. It's been moved on House Bill 1091, the committee report to reference it's not recommended for future legislation. I don't know if I have to do I have to do an actual roll call vote? Can we do a straw poll? And because it's an interim study report, not a.
Well, it's going to go to the floor, so I'd recommend
Okay. Roll call. All right, great. You just want me to do work. All right, so seeing no further discussion, we'll again call the roll. Representative Khan.
Yes.
Representative Close. Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Craig.
Yes.
Representative Love.
Yes.
Representative Wolf.
Yes.
Representative Kittredge.
Yes.
Representative Allard.
Yes.
Representative Smith.
Yes.
Representative Harvey.
Yes.
Representative Horrigan.
Yes.
Representative Massimilla. Yes. Representative Query. Oh, he's in there. Representative Kenny. Representative Gallagher.
Yes.
Representative Shirtliff. Yes. The chair votes yes on a vote of 16-0. I'll go on consent without objection. No objection. Next, we'll have the work session on House Bill 1201 relative to damage by bears. Again, I'll summarize what I heard in testimony was, if we remember, this bill was just recently modified in House Bill 2, the trailer bill. In that modification, one of the conditions they set was that in order for members to get future payments for bear damage to property by bears, The Fish and Game would potentially offer mitigation strategies to the person who applied for the money the first time. And if they don't do those mitigation strategies, they could not get a second year disbursement if they didn't take care of the mitigation. All that being said, I will say, I think it was last month, Colonel Jordan, I think the rules finally went into place for this. So we don't even have what the mitigation strategies would look like, what would potentially happen. So we have absolutely zero data on the changes we've already made. So I'm inclined to say not recommended for future legislation. Again, only because we don't have any data to change something that we just changed not a year ago. And so that is my general summary of what I heard and my impression of what I heard. I'll open it up for Colonel Jordan. Do you want to add anything to that, or you guys okay? So still waiting, still drafted, but not presented to Jalcar yet, I'm assuming. Is that where we're at? Maybe I'll see him this Friday. Any other discussion on House Bill 1201 FN relative to damage by bears? Representative Wolf.
Did you say that the law that went into effect as part of the trailer bill limits you to recovery 2 times? I didn't quite.
No, the changes I understand it that was put into House Bill 2 added a mitigation component saying that instead of just saying every year you could just apply and it just can apply and that was the only condition. If you apply, Fish and Game will assess whether or not there are any mitigation strategies that could be imposed that would make it so it doesn't happen a second time. And if they recommend mitigation strategies to a claimant on this fund and the claimant chooses not to implement the mitigation strategies, they probably won't get a second payment because they didn't do what Fish and Game asked them to do.
So it's 2 strikes, and if you don't mitigate, you're out.
Correct. That's my understanding of the way the
And
new change was.
And the rules are being worked on.
Rules are currently being worked on. Seeing no further discussion, I recognize Representative Khan for the purpose of a motion.
Chairman, I make a motion that HB 1201 not to recommend for future legislation.
It's been moved by Representative Khan not to recommend for future legislation on House Bill 1201, and it's seconded by Representative Harvey. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1201 and the recommendation not to recommend for future legislation? Not seeing any, I will go to the vote. Representative Khan.
Yes.
Representative Close.
Yes.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Craig.
Yes.
Representative Love.
Yes.
Representative Wolf.
Yes.
Representative Kittredge.
Yes.
Representative Allard.
Yes.
Representative Smith.
Yes.
Representative Harvey.
Yes.
Representative Horrigan.
Yes.
Representative Massimilla. Representative Query's not here. Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Gallagher.
Yes.
Representative Shirtliff.
Yes.
Ellis isn't here. Oxel isn't here. The chair votes yes. On a vote of 16-0, the recommendation is for not recommended for future legislation without objection will go on consent. I think that finishes all of our work for the entire year. Representative Khan had something he wanted to bring to the committee.
A few years ago, while I was talking to the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission members, I requested that if they can have a meeting in Seabrook because of our location in town, and we have lots of fishermen and hunters. It will be beneficial that our fishermen and hunter can have any question or concern to bring to the commission. The commission agreed to have a meeting on May 10th in Seabrook for their next May meeting. So we are inviting anybody who wants to come and, see the commission meeting, and if they have any concern or question, and any member or anybody of the public. So I'm inviting everybody. without any lobster though.
Representative Wolf.
Where will that meeting be taking place?
Seabrook Town Hall,
Seabrook.
1 o'clock in the afternoon.
So what was the date again?
May 10th, 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
So May 10th, 1 p.m., sorry, 1 a.m. That'd be an interesting meeting. 1 p.m. at the Seabrook Town Hall will be a Fish and Game Commission meeting. Anybody from the Seacoast who wants to attend is welcome to attend. Is there anything else? Being none, I want to say, yes, Catherine.
I just would like to, since this seems to be like our last time together, I'd just like to thank, as a ranking member, the work of all of the committee members this year on the bills that we've seen. Thank you.
One other thing I just want to bring over from the Senate, I attended a couple of the hearings. The Senate passed unanimously one of the ammo bill that cleaned up the language around ammunition. The game cam bill is going to be amended, and I'll send an email out to everybody once I get it back. Right now, it looks like Fish and Game is not in favor of the Senate's not in favor of the 10-hour rule we put in or the written recommendation. They seem to be okay with the labeling requirement. And Senator Bradley offered an amendment that says if you put in a tree stand, you got to take the tree stand out by December 31st, which I'm not generally opposed to. So we will have probably an email and just about concurrence, whether we'll concur or not with that change that they do. If they move the bill forward, they may just kill it too. So, but other than that, I think they passed the hike safe card. I can't remember what the other one was. It was a fourth one. We sent it. Remember,
The
Karen?
squirrel bill has not come to
The
committee
squirrel
yet.
bill has not gone in front of the committee yet. Yes, Representative Craig.
I just wanted to point out that I saw the new rules for turkey season and the issues we addressed on 410 and 28 gauge with heavy shot required are now in place. So that's
Thank you, guys.
effect.
Appreciate that. Anything else? All right. That being said, thank you all. It's been a joy being your chair for at least this term, and we'll see what happens next year. So thank you. Have a great day. Not recommended for future legislation. So I wrote down on my piece, I put NRFFL. Not recommended for future legislation.